Okay, we're in Micah chapter 4. And we're going to, they call these the minor prophets, but they're really not. And I kind of look at what they call the minor prophets as a bridge between particularly the book of Revelation and all what they call the major prophets. And there's these really solid links to these minor prophets from their prophecies into the future prophecies. And a lot of these words that come out of Micah are right out of the book of Revelation. And 4:1, and it came to pass, or shall come to pass, in the Acharit Hayamim, that always means the latter 2,000 years. Ahar, the latter part, Yamim, days. It's an idiomatic way in Hebrew, unless you quantify how many there are, that a doubling of a word, or a plural of a word means a double. Machanim means two camps. Dotim means two wells. Right? So here we are, the Acharit, the latter part of these days, so the last 2,000 years. The first time this term Acharit Hayamim is used is when Jacob in chapter 50 of Genesis passes on the blessings to his sons and says, let me tell you what's going to happen to each of your family lines in the Acharit Hayamim. And that links also to the book of Revelation where 12,000 of each of the 12 tribes for 12 days are brought forward, and that is the enjoining. As God says he enjoins you to your purpose, that's what he's talking about. So in these latter days, that Har Beit Yehovah, the mountain of the house of Yehovah, mountain being a kingdom, right, shall be established in the top of the mountains. Now this is a way of saying all the other kingdoms will be brought low, and Jerusalem, Zion, will be raised high, that kingdom. And it shall be exalted above all the hills. This is exactly, worded different, be exactly what we see in the book of Revelation. And the people shall flow unto it. When do they flow unto it? Sukkot. This first verse of chapter 4 really tells you everything about the millennium, how it's established, and what will happen during that time. And what are they going to do when they go there? They shall come many tribes, nations, goyim, which means tribal, and say, come, let us go up to Har Yehovah, the kingdom of Yehovah, and to the house of the God of Jacob, Beit Elohei Yaakov, and he will teach us from Derachav, his ways, and we will walk in Orch Otav, his paths. For from Zion, that means raised up, that's the kingdom, that's the physical place, goes forth the Torah and the Har Yehovah. And this is one of the classic messianic prophecies. And from Jerusalem. So the Torah will go forth and the word of Yehovah from Jerusalem. Well, how does it go forth? It actually links here to all the people shall flow unto the kingdom during Sukkot. And if they come, they become a well of living water. And when they go back to their kingdoms, from them will flow the word of Yehovah. Thank you, Sheila. Just get a little heads up here as I'm going. And he shall bring, in other words, I didn't know that 5 seconds ago. And he shall judge between peoples, countries, and rebuke strong nations, tribes, afar off. And that's as a dual meaning. There are peoples, nations, and countries that are far off away from God, but also it talks about Ephraim that has been far off, and they will come back. And what will they do? They will come back with many other people. That's why in Isaiah it says, don't call yourself separate from Israel or Jacob, because the house of Jacob, because that's where the covenants are. And they shall beat their swords and plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Now we're talking at the end of the time of tribulation going into the millennium. Goy, nation, shall not lift up sword against Goy. No more intertribal stuff. Neither shall they learn war anymore. And I want to emphasize again, there are no races. In fact, you should remove that word from your vocabulary. There is no... When people say racism, that's impossible. We are all the same. People might hate you because you're a different tribe, which is stupid because we're all the same family. But the races, it's a word that's made up. It comes from evolution, by the way. The whole theory of races comes from evolution, which is a lie. There are nations. There are different tribal lines. It's like your sister and your brother 1,000 years later. They look a little bit different than you because they lived in a different country. And they shall sit, each man, under his vine and under his fig tree, and none shall make them afraid. For the mouth of Yehovah, the spoken word of Yehovah, the Savayot Diber, the mouth of Yehovah of hosts has spoken it. It's done. But look at here. Every man shall sit under his vine and under his fig tree. So what's the millennium? It's a Shemitah. It's a jubilee. It's a year of release. It's a millennium of release, and we will no longer have to farm. Every person will sit under his own fig tree or vine, under his grapes or pomegranates or oranges, whatever you have, and we'll just eat off the fruit of the land. By the way, when God talks about the Shemitah period, how does he describe it? If you give the Shemitah, basically the animals restore. The balance of the natural order that God has set up when he created everything is restored as the best it can in this fallen world. So in the millennium, we have 1,000 years of everything starting to gradually get back to the way it should be. That balance between the different animals and peoples starts to restore. Yes?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly who it was, but in the New Testament, when Yeshua was calling his disciples, he told them, "I saw you under the fig tree."
Yes. Nathan. A man without guile. Because you believe, because I said I saw you under the fig tree, that you'll see greater things than these. He's going to see what's he telling him, by the way, when he sees that? Not only will you see the millennium, you will see the completion of it and the establishment of the eternal kingdom. You'll see greater things than this. And people always focus on stuff, but no, he's going to see the kingdom. He saw him in the millennium, and he'll see him in the kingdom. For all the peoples, countries walk, each, now this can mean every one or every man, in Shem Yehovah, in the name of his God, Shem Elohah, rather. But we, God's people, will walk in Shem Yehovah Eloheinu le'olam va'ed. The name of our Yehovah, our God, unto eternity, le'olam, toward eternity, and va'ed is beyond. That's through all the millennium and into the eternal kingdom. To infinity and beyond. Yeah. So I guess Buzz Lightyear is going to be in the kingdom. Written, every time I hear that, it cracks me up because it's right out of God's word. Bayom Hahu. So, if we were wondering if this has anything to do with the millennium, then in verse 6, God lets us emphatically know, because that is the term used for the millennium, and then he puts right after it, Naom Yehovah, saith Yehovah, which is the emphatic form of saying it. When God naums, it's locked. It's not just Devar or Leamor. It's emphatic. In that day, saith Yehovah, I will assemble that which is lame, and I will gather that which is driven away, and that which I have afflicted. So this has kind of a dual term, because this points to Yeshua. Because what did he do? He came healing the lame, the blind, the leper, the ones lost. But in the kingdom, all of us that were afflicted, because we are in this sinful world, we will be brought into his kingdom. And I will make at her that was lame a remnant.
I like kind of last night you linked 4:6 to John.
Yeah.
He was in prison, or somebody was.
Yeah, because when, I remember what we talked about last night now. When John started to have doubt, right? He asked, should we look for another? Right? He sent a couple of his disciples to Yeshua's disciples, and eventually to him, says, are you the one, or should we look for somebody else? And he doesn't answer the question. No, he does answer it directly. Because the issue is not whether he's God or not. The issue is the doubt that has cropped up in John the Baptist's mind, because he's in prison, and he knows he's never getting out of there. So he's wondering, did I do my job? And he has doubt. So how does he answer? Tell him that the blind from birth, the lame from birth have been healed, the leper is healed, and the good news of Besarah is preached unto the lost sheep of Israel. I know I'm kind of paraphrasing that a bit. And then the doubt, he removes the doubt. He doesn't answer it indirectly. He actually answers it directly, although in our minds we say he answered it indirectly. But Yeshua always answers the issue in your heart.
And he also, I'm sure John knew, the Son of Righteousness is coming with healing in
His wings, yeah. If you look at Matthew, particularly if you look at the Shem Tov version, which we're going to get into, eventually we'll study that book. You're going to see the order in the way he healed. At first, it was purely one-on-one physical healing. Then, of course, the word started to spread, and a lot more groups of healing came. And then he started dealing with the issue, because now the scribes and Pharisees come up toward him and say, "Hey, who the heck are you?" Basically, what's going on here? Says, because it's the Sabbath, he's about to heal a lame person. The issue was never the healing. The issue was always, is he God or not? Is he Messiah? Because later on he says, why do you seek to kill me for the works I do? No, you being a mere man claim to be God. That was always the issue. So God always answered. Yeshua always answered that issue. So when they said, there's a lame man before him on a Shabbat, says, basically he says, let's see if you heal him and break our rules. Now, in Shem Tov, that version of the Hebrew version of Matthew, I think it's the original version, he actually uses the word your takanot, your rules. But the Greek doesn't use that. It uses nomos, which is just law, which is a more generic term. So he says, what is more difficult to do? To forgive sins or to heal the lame? And they don't answer, of course, because they're trapped already. Because now they know when he does heal them, that what he's really saying is, I am Messiah. Because then he says, and to show that the son of Adam, Ben Adam, has the power to forgive sins on earth, arise and walk. Then go to Caiaphas, the phony high priest. John, the real high priest, is in prison, and the phony one is sitting in the seat of Moses, but doesn't do the things of Moses. Goes up to him, and now when he goes to him, he starts sending lepers and blind people up to Caiaphas. Why? Because it's right in his face, particularly the leper. A leper had never been healed and gone for the cleansing. Naaman was healed, but he went back home to Syria. And that's why he does the same thing with John. The lame, the blind, the leper, the good news is preached. These are messianic things because you know your Bible. You know your Tanakh, your Old Testament. They didn't have an Old Testament. Actually, neither do we. We have one Bible. The Brit Hadashah is not the New Testament. It's just the deeper teaching, the renewed understanding, and the completion of the understanding. Things brought into the spiritual instead of just in the physical. Even though the Torah is completely spiritual, it's more described more in the physical. And I will make her that was lame a remnant, and her that was cast far off. Her that was lame, Yehuda, and her that was cast far off, Ephraim. A strong singular nation. Now this is Goy, Atzum, Az is strength, right? It's the plural. All these people, but they're one nation. This is resurrected Israel. Because now we're in the Adamic, in the image of God. There's no more differentiation. And Jehovah will reign over them in Zion, in the raised up place, which in this case means the new kingdom, from henceforth and unto eternity, which is Leolam Bayed. It's said differently in the Hebrew psalm. And you, Migdal, tower, Eder, flock, Ophel, Bat-Zion, the tower of the flock of the stronghold of the daughter of Zion, unto you shall it come, even the former dominion shall come, the way it was in the beginning of creation, the kingdom of Bat Yerushalayim, which is the garden. It's not even the garden, it's the kingdom, because the garden was added later. That's the testing place. It's the restored heaven and earth singular kingdom. No more division of three into thirds. Now, why to cry out loud? Is there no king in you? Actually, that's just why do you cry out loud? I need to fix that. Didn't see it last night or the night before, the night before, the night or the night before, or when I did it, I didn't see it. But now, of course, in the middle of teaching, I see it. So now, why do you cry out loud? Is there no king in you?
Right. No Messiah.
Is your counselor perished? In other words, so we're, Micah is about the time of Jeremiah. There's a lot of overlap in here. We're talking a nation that has given themselves over to godlessness.
And then Satan there came.
Yes. That pangs have taken hold of you as of a woman in travail.
Wow.
So now we're getting near the time of Nebuchadnezzar coming in and destroying everything. Be in pain. And the labor to bring forth Bat-Zion. See? Be in pain. Go through this suffering. And what's going to come out? Those under this, look, the pain in our lives, the struggle we go through. You know, Christianity depicts a life with Jesus as riding bicycles and eating ice cream at the beach. And not a worry in the world. And it's just peachy keen, no struggles. That's not the way it is. In fact, a world of a relationship with the Messiah, the deeper you get into it, it actually becomes more of a spiritual struggle than anything else. We're going to go through hard times. They hated God. Yeshua just says what? They hated me and I'm God. Imagine what they'll do to you.
Matter of fact, Yeshua actually tells us to be joyful when we get persecuted.
Right, because that's this. That's why I'm bringing this up. In pain, this will bring forth the daughter of Zion. Now, this is prophesied in Ezekiel and Jeremiah and other places. You know, who are these that come? Don't worry, in the latter days, you're going to be restored, and all these are going to be restored back to Zion, the raised up kingdom, not only in the millennium, but into eternity. Like a woman in travail, for now shall you go forth out of the city. This is the pain. Now so if you're going to go forth out of the city, this is the time when some of them were expelled and taken to Jerusalem. So we know kind of where we are in the Jeremiah's time. And shall dwell in the field, and shall come even unto Babylon, right? Because the latter one, no one left that. They were all killed. There shall you be rescued. There Jehovah will redeem you from the hand of your enemies. But which Babylon are we talking about here? Both of them. Yes. Come out of her, my people. You see, that's what I'm talking about. There's always this multi-level past, present, and future going on. But as we get into some of these quote-unquote minor prophets, there's these dual, their future and the real future and the eternal future.
It said the physical what happened in the physical is a lesson, the big spiritual.
Which we've been talking now for like a month. Stop looking at the physical stuff. What is it teaching us? This Babylon represents one of Satan's kingdoms. So did Egypt. So did Genghis Khan. So did Hitler. So does the United States now. These are all countries or leaders trying to take over the world. Now we're going to have this universal beast government system, right? Forming right in front of our eyes. And that's the Babylon physical, but the real issue is the spiritual Babylon. Because Babylon means confusion. This relates all the way back to Nimrod, the whole world coming together to do evil and create a tower, a governmental system, and the opposite of God's commandments is what the world is doing right now. And then God confused them. You don't think he's not going to do it again?
Yeah, so that establishment of those horns on that goat.
And the little horn that comes up? Yeah.
10 horns are being established, the little horn
Hasn't shown up yet, right. There you shall be rescued. Re-rescued. Another mistake. Yeah, rescued. This is Elmer Fudd's version of verse 10. There you shall be rescued. Who wrote this anyway? Who translated this? I have to raise my hand on that. I did this.
Sounds like a Scooby rescue.
It's supposed to be there you shall be rescued. Rescued. It's very emphatic. This is God's very emphatic barking form of rescue. If you're listening to this online, you know, God has a sense of humor. Yeah, God did not stutter. I do. There will Jehovah redeem you.
Yes.
Your Redeemer, your Goel. The Goel, the Redeemer. That's right.
Hallelujah.
From the hand of your enemies.
Yes, indeed.
The hand. The hand of Satan. The enemies are the branches.
Yes.
Remember, the hand of Pharaoh was hard on the people. And all the taskmasters and the beaters, those are the enemies. It's another type and shadow. And now many, Goyim, are assembled against you that say, let her be defiled, and let her eyes gaze in conquest upon Zion. That's what they're doing right now. And Zion, really right now, is God's people in the world. They're trying to kill Israel. They're trying to kill the inhabitants of Zion. You can focus on the little land of Israel if you want to. And I know that's where the final physical battle is going to be, but it's actually a spiritual Zion in the world we're dealing with. We have a spiritual Babylon, which is over the whole world. Ezekiel says we're scattered in the wilderness of the countries, the peoples. But they know not the thoughts of Jehovah. Neither understand they his counsel, for he has gathered them as sheaves to the threshing floor. But this relates to other parts in the Old Testament where God says, you know, all the nations think they're coming up against Jerusalem, but in actuality I am drawing them near to destroy them in front of my people so they will believe. It's Egypt dead on the seashore again. That's what he's saying right here. They're going to be gathered as sheaves for the threshing floor. The threshing floor is the separation of God's seed from the chaff of Satan and the wheat from the tares. Because the tares have no seed. They're just chaff. They do have some seed, but it's all junk. It's poisonous. What?
I'm just saying, if you don't have God's seed.
Because it's the threshing floor of Atad.
Get burned up.
Right, and the threshing floor of Atad, that's the temple mount. Arise and thresh, Bat Zion. That's a type and shadow or a metaphor for saying we will judge kings. For I will make your horn iron, your leader will be the punisher. Horns are leaders. And I'll make your hooves bronze. We will tread upon the ashes of the dead, right? Malachi, the great Italian Malachi. We will run out of the calves and tread, and the wicked will be ashes, the lower feet. And you shall beat in pieces many peoples, but countries. And I will devote their gain unto Jehovah, and their substance unto Adon Kol Ha'aretz, the Lord of all the earth. Everything returns back to Messiah. Everything. It was always his. And he returns and then he parses out the his. Crushes the whole, right. It hits it on the feet and the whole statue collapses. And the stone cut without hands came down from heaven and fell upon the 10 toes, and all the kingdoms, everything that is Satan's collapses. Daniel. Yep. Also, we're going to plunder Egypt. It's another type of shadow of that. It's back wages. Because everything was God's, and only God's people get what is God's. Now shall you gather yourself in truth. Bat Gedud, daughter of troops. This is, what's the root word here? God, G-A-D, one of the tribal names. For God, G-A-D, is a truth. Remember? In the prophecy for him? He is a truth. He has laid siege against us. They shall smite at Shophet Yisrael, the judge of Israel, with a rod upon the cheek. This is how we went through pain earlier, right, in 4:9. Well, this is 4:14. Notice 14, the number of salvation. Our Savior also gets struck on the cheek. What happens to us happens to him. What happens to him happens to us. This is about Messiah dying for it. And how all the world gathers against him.
I still love the way you read the Bible enough that God puts definitions of what's going on in those verses with his coach. So you know, slapping on the cheeks, you know that's Messiah that
Yes.
died for us. They were slapping.
And they were laying their sins on him. Blasphemer. They were their sins they were laying on the Lamb. Yeah. And it's a hyperlinked document because of that. It's proof that this was written by one God, not many people. They were scribes, but he's the author of all of it because everything interlinks. And if these books were written thousands of years apart by people on their own, as the world claims, you couldn't have this. They were written in different countries at different times in different languages when they didn't even have the other documents. Our Torah portion is Vayikra, Leviticus chapter 19 and 20 of the Torah portion of Kedoshim, which means holies, but we translate as holy ones because it's a plural form and the ones are understood. Jehovah spoke to Moshe to say, speak to Kol Adat B'nai Israel, all the congregation of the sons of Israel. Now remember, the Adat is the more believing, tighter, better relationship group. The Kahal is the entire assembly, and in the Kahal there's a lot of doubt. There's everything from almost strong belief to really very little belief, and a lot of the ones that fall away and all the trouble happen in the Kahal generally, and the Adat are like the inner circle. Even within the 12 disciples, you had a Kahal and you had an Adat. The Kahal being all the 12 disciples. Remember the doubter Thomas is in there. You have other issues going in. Judas is in the Kahal. But the Adat is James, John, and Peter. Those are the ones taken to the Mount of Transfiguration. John is the high priest of that group in the sense that he's the one that who Yeshua loved that laid on his chest all the time. It's a picture of the kingdom. There's this hierarchy in the kingdom. There's still God's people have different levels of relationship. He loves us all, and we love him. So, speak to Kol Adat B'nai Israel and tell them, you shall be Kedoshim, holies. But that's not how he translates it. So ones is understood here. They're holy ones. For Kadosh Ani Yehovah, holy I Yehovah, Elohechem, the God of all of you. In the South we say the God of all y'all. Each of you shall reverently, that's a form yireh, it's a fear centered on reverence as opposed to on terror. Reverently fear his mother and his father. Why? If you don't honor your father and your mother, how are you going to honor your God in heaven and his word, Torah, which is kind of the feminine mother side? And at Shabtate and at my Sabbaths you shall keep. I am Jehovah Elohechem, the God of all of you. Do not turn to idols nor make molten images for yourselves. I am Jehovah, the God of all of you. Sometimes he just says, I am Jehovah, but and this is even the more emphatic form of all of you, plural. And when you offer a sacrifice of peace offerings, remember peace is the removal of act of sin in your life. So our peace offering to God would be thank you for forgiving my sin and showing me sin in my life and helping me to overcome it. That's a peace offering in the present sense. To Jehovah you shall offer it so that it may be accepted. Well, in today's vernacular, in the spiritual sense, that means you don't ask God for forgiveness for the murder you're going to commit next Tuesday. If you have murdered somebody, then you ask for forgiveness. And, because you're really sorrowful, that's the proper way. Not because you want to do it and you ask for forgiveness. I'm going to be a thief the rest of my life. Would you forgive me? That's improper.
That's one saves always.
Yeah. You're supposed to turn from your sin. That's part of teshuvah, to turn. Shuv is turning, is the action of turning, is teshuvah. Yeshua, he's the one who turns you from your sin. It shall be eaten the same day you offer it, and on the next day, and if anything remains until the third day, it shall be burned with fire, because after the third day is corruption. Our Messiah did not see corruption. If it is eaten on the third day, it will be an abomination. It will not be accepted. And everyone who eats it shall bear his iniquity, because he has profaned at Kodesh Jehovah. Because you're saying this holy one, these holy food, remember, the spiritual side of this, Yeshua says, you shall eat my flesh and drink my blood. Every sacrifice represents the work of Messiah. So if you profane it, if you don't do it the way he says, you're misrepresenting him. He has profaned at Kadosh Jehovah. So now we see the singular form of Kodesh at holy thing of Jehovah. Kadosh, holy one, holy place, holy thing. Because wherever God is, that's Kadosh. So he's the Holy One. And that soul, that individual shall be karat, cut off from his people. That's karat is the term for death at the judgment, the eternal death. And when you reap at harvest of your land, you shall not wholly reap the corners of the field, neither shall you gather the gleanings of your harvest. You shall not glean your vineyard, neither shall you gather the fallen grapes of your vineyard. You shall leave at them for the poor and for the sojourner. God later enters on, also it's for the animals, right? Ani Yehovah Elohechem. It's everything belongs to God. And of every field, there's actually a tithe left over for the others. For people that are hungry for a relationship with Messiah and don't really fully know it. If Boaz hadn't done this, we'd have no Ruth. And Ruth is a picture of a sojourner. By the way, a sojourner is not a stranger. Because we're going to see later on, if the stranger chooses to sojourn with you, the sojourner is the one who's checking you out. Remember, we were sojourners in Egypt, and what God was saying, we are now sojourners in the world, but we're not of it. But we're making a decision whether we're going to stay in that world or go back to God's world.
Ruth is a sojourner, Orpah
Isn't anything a stranger or alien? Yes. She goes back to her God. So when Naomi says to her, to the two daughters, why don't you go back, or daughters-in-law, why don't you go back to your people and your God? She's saying, go back to Moloch and go sacrifice children. And Orpah does that. By the way, Oprah Winfrey is named after Oprah. Orpah. It's a misspelling of her name. And you can see her evil. She's about child sacrifice. You shall not steal, neither shall you deal falsely, nor lie to one another. That's within your community. This other stuff is for the outside. We're supposed to be enhancers of the path to God. We should represent him, not by our behavior. If it's proper, we are honoring God's name. If it becomes improper, we are profaning God's name. That's why when Moses struck the rock, he did not show God to be holy, so he was profaning his name. That's why he said, he didn't say, you disobeyed me and struck the rock. He says, you did not show me to be holy. You profaned my name. And you shall not swear by my name falsely. This is exactly the New Testament portion where in Shem Tov it puts the falsely back in there and the Greek removes it. It says you should not swear at all. It's not what God says. You shall not swear falsely, particularly by his name. Because if you swear by his nature and don't follow up, you are profaning his name again. And profane, the whole said, the name of your God, not Shem Elohecha. It's an individual issue. Everyone is supposed to obey these commandments, but ultimately everything is us with our God at an individual level. And Yehovah, there's that emphatic. That's the authoritative stamp he puts on these sentences, on these verses. And you shall not oppress at your neighbor, nor rob him. The wages of a hired servant shall not remain at you all night until the morning. The New Testament says because a person's hungry and they're counting on this. You shall not curse the deaf, nor put a stumbling block before the blind. Faith comes by hearing, and that of the Word of God. So don't lie to them. Nor put a stumbling block before the blind. The ones who can't see, they just don't know what's going on in the world, then don't lead them astray. Either spiritually or physically, don't harm them, don't prevent them. In Judaism, they say we don't proselytize. There's other churches, unless you go through a certain regimen, they don't even let you in the building. That's putting a stumbling block. And then if you go into congregations and they're teaching lies, now you're putting a stumbling block and then you're cursing the deaf. They hear but they don't listen. They see but they do not perceive. You shall do no injustice in judgment. In other words, everything is according to Torah. You shall not be partial to the poor, nor show favoritism to the great. God says he's not a respecter of the person. I don't care if you're a king or a garbage man. The issue is the same. Sin, you call on me for forgiveness. I don't care who you are. I don't care how much money you have or don't have. You shall not go up and down as a slanderer among your people. This is basically what Sa'arat is. Destruction of people through words. Either through gossip, false testimony. Neither shall you stand against the life of your neighbor. See? Sa'arat kills your neighbor. It's your neighbor. Don't worry about the outside world. Paul says they're dealing with their issues. This is within the community. But then when someone comes in, they may or may not be a member of the community. I am Jehovah. You shall not hate your brother in your heart. Neither shall you rebuke your neighbor. You shall surely rather rebuke your neighbor and not bear sin because of them. If there is open, active sin in someone's life in our community, you should privately confront them about the behavior, not about the person. By the way, but you need to be checking with Yeshua that says, hey, do I have any issues in my life? Get the log out of your own eye. You have to be in relationship with Messiah, and then he's going to lead you to do this, by the way. You just don't decide on your own that you're going to be the judge of the nations, because God is the judge of all the earth. So it's easy but complex. You shall not take vengeance. What does God say? Vengeance is mine. Nor bear any grudge against the sons of your people. By the way, if you bear a grudge and you hold anger in your heart, it actually physically destroys your immune system, but it blocks you. Blocks your relationship with God. But you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love is willing to die for somebody. It doesn't mean no matter what they do, sloppy agape, oh yeah, blah, blah. No. Love is a serious thing. I am Jehovah. Et chukotai, my statutes you shall keep. You shall not crossbreed the different kinds of beasts. You shall not sow your field with two kinds of seed. Neither shall there come upon you a garment made of sha'atnet, which is a specific blend of linen and wool. So if you have cotton and polyester, forget about it. Little big Mickey Blue Eyes of Kansas City says, forget about it. God says this is a specific mixture. It's not the linen and wool that's the issue. What does this represent? Linen removes sweat, and it's spiritual. Wool causes sweat, is beastly. The Canaanite priests, their garments were a blend of linen and wool.
The world is trying to.
Why do they have a garment of linen and wool? What is a type and shadow of? What is it an analogy of?
Jacob is trying to bring the world and salt water.
Nope, it's not that. It's the tree of the knowledge of good linen and evil wool. The priests of Satan, they blend, they mix truth and lies. That's what it's teaching. Don't be two-purposed. Don't be two-faced. Remember in Seinfeld, she's two-faced. Good looking one moment, ugly the next. Don't be good water, fresh water, and salt water can't come out of the same fountain. You can't love two masters. You'll hate one and love the other.
It's like, where it says they muddy the water, they do
Yeah, the goats. They stamp and poop in the water. They muddy it so that no one can drink from it. Every time we've had people who come here, they come on Shabbat and they go on Sunday. Not one has stayed. You have to make a choice. Are you going to go on Sunday and hear the Christian misinterpretation of God's word? Or are you going to observe Shabbat and hear the true word? You can't listen to both because they're completely different messages.
We all made that choice.
Yes, you have to make that choice. That's what this is about. It's about choice. It's about being one-minded, one-purposed. Are you going to do God's will or Satan's will? What does Elijah say? If Baal is Lord, worship him. If Jehovah is Lord, worship him. Choose this day. By the way, it's Bayom HaZeh. That's this day too. But ultimately it's the judgment day. But by then you made your choice. So that's why it says your choice will affect you at resurrection. So choose this day before that day.
That guy had the right chose.
He chose, yeah, that was this day for him.
And he chose.
And then the next day, by Yom Hu at the judgment, the great judgment seat at the end of the millennium, his choice is rewarded. And the man to his left who cursed Messiah, his choice is also rewarded with eternal death. Because he chose to reject God. Now, if you notice later on when he talks about don't put a cow, an ox, and a donkey together. Cow's a clean animal, donkey's an unclean animal. Wheat and tares. One's godly, one's ungodly. Remember the man planted wheat and then his enemy came in and planted tares? It's God's purpose, Satan's purpose. Choose. And if a man lies carnally with a woman who is a slave girl, which means she has no choice, pledged to be married to another man and not ransomed or given her freedom, they shall be punished. They shall not be put to death because she was not free. He shall bring his trespass offering to Jehovah to the door of the Ohel Moed and a ram for a trespass offering. And the priest shall make atonement for him with the ram of the trespass offering before Jehovah for his sin which he has committed, and the sin which he has committed has forgiven him. So this is basically about us sleeping with Satan, but we're not killed with him. And when you come into the land, and you have planted every kind of tree for fruit, then you shall count that their fruit is forbidden. 3 years they shall be forbidden to you, it shall not be eaten. But in the 4th year all its fruit shall be holy for giving praise to Jehovah. In the 5th year you shall eat its fruit, that it may yield its increase to you. I am Jehovah the God of all. And I've told the story many times. We did this. What happens is the first year, every bird, every animal in the area sees there's new fruit trees, and they strip you. They strip those trees. I mean, we didn't get a grape or an orange. But then the next year when they come, and the animals come, some say, this is the 2nd year. I think I'm staying here. And they start protecting the territory. And by the 3rd year, they have established territories. And now they eat their portion for guarding your fruit, essentially. I know people don't see it though, but they're protecting your fruit trees. And they take a wage. And by the 4th year, you now have established, and most fruit trees really don't start bearing till the 4th year anyways. Nut trees take 10, 15 years. But fruit trees, by the 5th year, like oranges, at the 5th year you really get good fruit. But if you've done this, you've established the territories, you've let the animals join with you in the blessing of God, and now everything works well. What's this teaching though? Do it according to God's will. He's saying it works. It works. Because God causes all things to work together for good, for those that love Him. You shall not eat anything with blood. Neither shall you use divination or practice sorcery. No drugs, no soothsaying, no to see better. No. It's the back door of spirituality, the evil door. You shall not round the hair on the corners of your heads, neither shall you mar the edges of your beard. Why does God say this? Because that practice was people would cut their beards or their tonsure, the bald spot. They would do all these specific marks in their beards and their hair to indicate who they worship. You see that now? People carve stuff in their hair. And they put clips. I've seen people put the awful things on them. And the tattoos, I've yet to see a really good one. If it's happened to you, don't worry about it. God forgives everything.
And they've got people that put implants in their head and
With horns, just that. You shall not make any cutting in your flesh for the dead, nor tattoo any marks on you. Tattooing comes from the harlots of the homosexual and heterosexual harlots of the pagan temples, the gods they serve. I am Jehovah. Basically what he's saying, don't mess with your body. The way I made you, you know. I always make a joke that the women like every color of hair except the one that God gave them. Men are doing this now too. They're wearing makeup and putting implants in and just, you know.
if you're not happy with,
Yeah, for fake muscles, fake calves.
if you're not happy with your body, then you're saying God was wrong.
Yes, God is wrong. It doesn't mean you can't comb your hair and wear nice clothes, okay?
Yeah.
But it's the why behind it. Why are you doing that?
The original.
Yes, OEM, right?
Yes.
Don't you find that with cars? The OEM stuff's usually the best,
Oh, yeah.
unless it's a Chevy. If you're a Chevy owner, I apologize. I'm just joking. Do not turn to mediums or wizards. Oh, wait, no, let's see. Do not profane your daughter to make her a harlot. Don't send her to the temple to raise money for that god and take the honor of it, because they used to do this. Their children, they're serving in the temple as prostitutes. And that's why they would have all these marks on them for the god they served and the services they offer. And the chart and everything on naming your price. Do not profane your daughter to make her a harlot. By the way, we're all bat zion,
Yeah.
and Satan has profaned us. Lest the land fall to prostitution, paganism, and how ours become full of wickedness. Look at the world today. At Shabbatai, my Sabbath you shall keep, and reverently fear my sanctuary. I am Jehovah. Do not turn to those who are mediums, nor to wizards. Do not seek them out to be defiled by them. I am Jehovah Elohim.
If the Sabbath is a chance for us to get separate ourselves from that for one day a week.
It recenters us. When people talk about getting centered, we get centered here. By center, I mean we look at Shabbat as it refocuses us and gets us what's the real issue, spiritual. What's the real path, spiritual? What's the real food, spiritual? What do we really need? Salvation. We don't need a new car. Well, you might need a new car. I don't know the condition of your car. You might need it. But in other words, we need salvation. We need sin out of our lives. That's the issue. And this refocuses us. If you come here because you want to. Do not turn to those who are mediums, because they're going to tell you other things.
Yeah.
We had a medium as our high priest of the nation. Obama, I remember, says, it's all happenstance. You didn't do anything. It's just by chance. You're oppressed because somebody wanted to oppress you. There's no control in the world. That you need to give everything to the government will give you what you need. No. There's no longer a Christian nation. First thing you get down is put down a mosque road, turn the White House into a Muslim mosque. Now we had Trump, now we have Biden. They're all different priests of Satan. Yes, they are. You shall rise up before the gray-headed and honor the face of an old man. And you shall reverently fear Jehovah, your God, individual, singular, right? Your God. I am Jehovah. If a stranger sojourns with you, now we're talking the path. Stranger who now says, well, I'll check this out. That's what Sukkot is in the millennium. The strangers of the world decide to sojourn, and that means they're obeying God, and they're going to check out whether his word is true or not. God says, come up on all the nations at Sukkot. Well, let's go up. We sing the song, let's go up and God will teach us his ways. We just read it earlier. So if the stranger sojourns with you in your land, you shall not oppress him. Because if you're oppressing him, then you're misrepresenting God. God's not an oppressor.
That's right.
He's a builder up. Spiritual builds you up. The stranger sojourns with you shall be to you as a native born among you.
You know my family.
What did Boaz do? Don't go to any other field. Continue to glean here. And when he saw that she was faithful and continued to sojourn in the worship places, the field, now he started saying, take some out of the sheaves and just drop it behind. Now you get a little deeper understanding as the more you sojourn. And eventually says, let her get right into the sheaves. Get right in with my people, because now she's becoming my people.
We're all Ruth.
We're all this. We're either strangers or sojourners. That's why God says you're in the world, but don't be of it. If you're of it, you're the stranger or alien. If you're just in it, but traveling through, then you're a sojourner, traveler. You shall treat them as a native born among you, and at you, all of you, shall love him as yourself. Shema Be'ahafta, right? You shall love your neighbor as yourself. For you were in the same situation. You were sojourners in Egypt, and ultimately you wanted out. These people, hopefully they want to stay in God's kingdom, not in Egypt. Because there's a lot going on here. Okay, we're all strangers, but the strangers who have come into your land, also remember that we were also strangers in Egypt, and we decided to leave. So they're saying, well, let's hang out with the Egyptian leavers, and not with Egypt. Go ahead.
That also explains the neighbor.
Yes, that's right. The one who's, it's not just anybody. It's not the stranger, it's the sojourner who joins you. That's your neighbor. Your brother is one who's become one of you. For you were these sojourners, and rejected Egypt. I am Jehovah, the God of all of you. Shall do no unrighteousness and judgment. Righteousness is belief in God's word and all the promises therein. Which is saying your judgment shall be Torah-based. Shoftim says the same thing. That what the judges say, you better do it. But, judges, you better judge according to Torah, the tenor of the Torah. So do no unrighteousness in anything, in length, measures of length, of weight, or quantity. Just balances, that's judging. Just weights, buying and selling. A just ephah and a just hin, those are dry and wet measurements. Shall you have, I am Jehovah, the God of all of you, that's you in the plural, who brought at you, plural, out of Eretz Mitzrayim, the land of oppression, Satan's kingdom. Brought you out of the kingdom of sin.
History and prophecy.
Yes, absolutely. You shall observe at Kal Chukotai, at Kal Mishpatai, all my statutes and all my ordinances. Why? Because it's the way of life. And do at them. Don't just look, do. Yaakov, James, New Testament, brother of Yeshua, by the way. The only one of his family that we can see other than Miriam, his mother, that were believers. Joseph probably as well. But the children, the only one was James. He says, I'll show you my faith by my actions. And if I have no actions, that means I have no faith. But it's not the actions, it's the faith that matters.
And in the spiritual picture of the weights and ounces,
Yes. There it is. It's your just weight, just balance. You should observe it, all these ordinances, for I am Jehovah. And Jehovah spoke to Moshe to say, and you shall tell the sons of Israel, Bnei Israel, anyone of Bnei Israel, or of the strangers who sojourn among you, right? One God, one Torah, one people in Israel. Those are those who overcome as a prince with God. Who gives any of his seed to Molech, he shall surely be put to death. Am ha'aretz, the people of the land shall stone him with stones. The picture of Messiah will judge you and destroy you for doing that. Fall on the stone or the rock before it crushes you. I will also set my presence, my face, at Panai, against that person, and at him cut off from among his people, because he has given of his seed to Molech, to defile at my sanctuary and to profane my holy name. Later on, Yeshua says, the thought of doing this never came up in my mind. So why is that important, though? There's a lot more in that sentence than just that. That means Jesus isn't some third-person son of his. He didn't send his son. He created a fleshly being that he would fully inhabit. God came down here and died for us. And he just wore this outer coating of flesh so that we wouldn't die. He didn't send his son. God came here. I know he's not called the son of... It's called the son of Adam. That's the flesh was born of that genetic line from Adam. But God was pleased to put the fullness of the Godhead in the man, Jesus Christ. In the Adam anointed Yeshua.
So, not to get on a side note, but, when people say that Jesus changed the rules, well, what did he say? He says, I do nothing except the...
I say nothing and do nothing out with God in me, Jehovah in me.
Godhead in me.
Yep.
And then Jehovah says, I change not. So
Yeshua says the same yesterday, today, and forever. God says, I'm not man that I should lie. And if you change the rules, you're lying. Islam's full of this, by the way. It's called abrogation. There's the original Quran, and then there's all these abrogations, changing the rules along the way. I also set my face against that person, and had him cut off from among his people, because he has given of his seed. He's misrepresented me, profaned my name. And if the people, land, Am Ha'aretz, all hide at their eyes from that person, guess what? When he gives of his seed to Molech and do not put him to death, then I will set my face against that man, against his family. Why? Because if you don't do anything or say anything, don't voice. I know we're trapped in a world where you can't go arrest people. But we can, if people ask, what do you think about abortion? It's wrong.
Right.
Birth control is abortion, just it prevents that implantation, taking that pill. It's wrong. I will set my face against that person and family, and at him will cut off, and all who play the harlot with Molech from among his people. When he's saying, you are now giving their children but they're God's children. So you're giving my children to Moloch. And the person that turns to those who are mediums and the wizards to play the harlot after them, I will set my face against that person. And at him will cry off among his people. Because what you're doing here, you're looking to God, to Satan for answers instead of God. What's the last thing that, two last things that Saul did? He turned to the witch of Endor. Star Wars is evil. All witchcraft. Sorry, dude. I'll still send you the Star Wars memes. And the last act, he murdered himself. It's not your life.
Same thing with
Judas.
his last act of murder.
Yeah, he hung himself on a sword. He disemboweled himself. Harakiri, if you were Japanese. Seppuku, if you really want to get down to it, right? Sanctify yourselves, therefore, and be holy. For Ani Yehovah Elohechem, I am Yehovah, the God of all of you. And you shall keep my statutes and do with them. I am Yehovah who sanctifies you, separates you from the world. So all this stuff is about being sojourners on the journey toward God's kingdom and being separated more and more from the world. For everyone who curses his father and at his mother shall surely be put to death. He has cursed his father or his mother, his blood shall be upon him. The man who commits, this is one of the commandments that said that was never kept. Your parents didn't kill their children. And the man who commits adultery with the wife of another man, he who commits adultery with the wife of his neighbor, or the adulterer and the adulteress shall be surely be put to death. That's why when they brought the adulteress before Yeshua, he couldn't do anything because he wasn't a witness, and they were saying, he says, you're supposed to bring both of them. I like when he's writing their names in the dust. That's from Jeremiah. The wicked, their names shall be written in the dust. So I guess as he wrote each name, that person, I think I'll get out of here. Because they knew the passage. They didn't obey it, but they knew it. And the man who lies with that wife of his father has uncovered the nakedness of his father. Now we know from here what Ham did. He didn't have homosexual sex with Noah, he slept with his mother. Both of them shall surely be put to death, their blood shall be upon them. And if a man lies with his daughter-in-law, both of them shall surely be put to death. For what famous person slept with his daughter-in-law? Judah. Tamar. That was his daughter-in-law. 2 times over. Should have been the 3rd time to Selah, but he wouldn't do it. They have committed a perversion, their blood shall be upon them. If a man lies with a male, that's a man, by the way. I don't care what the Supreme Court justice that just got implanted. What's a man or a woman? I don't know. I'm not a biologist. If a man sleeps with another man, right, male or male, as with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination, they shall surely be put to death, their blood shall be upon them. Soon in this country this will be illegal to say. It is already legal in many nations in the world to say this. Switzerland and Canada being 2 of them. Who? Bruce? Oh, Jenner? I have no idea. I don't listen to the news at all. Wasn't he, I think, wasn't he married to one of the Kardashians, the,
Right, but he left her, and I think she was another one.
I don't know, it's just perversion upon, the strangest thing to me when I used to read all this stuff was that many people who have their mutilation, it's not even, you can't change your sex, that's determined by your genes. But if you want to mutilate, if a man mutilates himself to be a woman, very often they go become a lesbian. Or women who turn into men become lesbians also. It's just, they become homosexual or whatever. I'm so confused with this. We're running out of letters in the alphabet. It's getting so strange.
It's just the alphabet, like, they're
Yeah.
called LGBT alphabet soup. Like,
Yeah.
just,
Pick a letter.
people have these thinking, have to letter for a
You have all these symbols and
But
stuff.
it's all the same thing. It's this.
Yeah.
You determine it, like it's just this. You're just saying this really fancy. It's real special. Y'all have to.
I love the meme that says, shows all the pictures of man, woman, a woman with a dress, all these things. Whatever, just wash your hands, when you come out of the bathroom.
That's what makes it so weird about that whole scenario. He's a man, wanting to be a woman, and he was wired to be with a woman, but he dressed as a girl. I don't, it's confusing. It's Satan.
It's Satan. Yeah. He's the author of confusion. They have chosen the kingdom of confusion, Babylon.
Right.
But how dare you?
I do find the amazing thing is that they really don't like the world that they created. They never imagined they'd have to live in it.
They keep getting more and more
Yeah.
confusing, and they fight against each other.
Yeah, now you have men claiming to be women to, set the world record in swimming and track and weightlifting and wrestling.
And then they're mad because women are upset. It's like,
I thought you wanted this. Well, they did, but they didn't.
well, the women are leaving their sports because they're like, this is pathetic. And you're like, how dare you discriminate? There is a man in my dressing room. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I'm not discriminating.
Enjoy the world you created, Enjoy the world you created.
When the name were, women were born into the hospital.
I remember that.
It's like they pushed something that's now.
Yeah, it's turned right on them. Absolutely. Because I remember when this first started happening in football and baseball, some of the players would stay in the showers. They wouldn't come out until the women were gone. Then they made them come out. Their sports affiliations or whatever made them do the interviews. Oh well, if a man takes a wife and at her mother, it is wickedness. They shall be burned with fire. And at her, at he, and at they, that there may be no wickedness among you. And if a man lies with the beast, he shall surely be put to death, and that you shall kill the beast. And if a woman reproaches any beast and lies down with it, you shall kill at the woman and at the beast. They shall surely be put to death, their blood shall be upon them. 15 and 16, when's the first time this happened? In the garden. Adam and Eve slept with the serpent. That was the beast. The serpent was the wisest or the trickiest of all the beasts of the earth. So the first sex was not only adultery, it was also bestiality. But the spiritual beast in the serpent is Satan. So Satan is the beast, and we are the man and the woman. So Satan is definitely going to die. And if we don't confess our sins, we will also die. Because every time we sin, we are sleeping with the beast. We're committing adultery, spiritual adultery. So I guess it comes back down, sin is the issue. We need to confess and turn from our sins. But we can't do anything without Messiah, for he is the tree, we are but the branches. We must abide in him. And if a man takes at his sister, the daughter of his father, or the daughter of his mother, and sees at her nakedness, and she sees at his nakedness, it is a shameful thing, and they shall be cut off in the sight of the sons of the people. He has uncovered the nakedness of his sister, he shall bear his iniquity. If a man lies with a woman having her monthly period and uncovers at her nakedness, he has made naked her issue, and he has uncovered the issue of her blood. Both of them shall be cut off from among their people. By the way, okay, no children. I have to be careful, because this is brutally honest. Because when you sleep with someone, you are literally taking that material into you. So when a woman is bleeding, technically you are eating the blood. For women, every man she's ever slept with, the body actually retains some of the DNA of each man she's ever. It's like we're all women, okay, in God's eyes, right? It's the witness against us. Our own activities are recorded, even in our bodies. Promiscuity, you're sleeping with everybody who's ever slept with anybody. You're sleeping with all of them. But particularly, this is blood. You're breaking the blood commandment here.
Pagan system, you're sleeping with Satan.
Yes, you're speaking to Satan. And you shall not uncover the nakedness of the sister of your mother, nor the sister of your father, for she has made naked the close relative, they shall bear their iniquity. If a man lies with the wife of his uncle, he has uncovered the nakedness of his uncle, they shall bear their sin, they shall die childless. That means if they get married. It's too close. If a man takes the wife of his brother, it is an impurity, he has uncovered the nakedness of his brother, they shall be childless. John the Baptist was telling Herod, give your brother his wife back. Cost him his life, but that was love, by the way he was loving him, by warning him. Cost him his life, tortured for Christ. That's loving your brother. You shall therefore keep it all the statutes and ordinances, my ordinances and statutes and ordinances, and do at them. The Aleph Tav is a Messiah signal. He's the one who enables us to do this. That the earth, the land, where I am bringing you to dwell, may not vomit at you out. In Deuteronomy, he says, look, the Canaanites have broken all these commandments. That's why God is vomiting them, taking them out. And if you go in there and do any of these sins, the land will vomit you out.
Vomited Satan and his angels out.
Yep.
The kingdom will go free.
Yep.
We're attached to him, we won't get still back.
That's right. You shall not walk in the customs of the Goy, which I am casting out before you. Now we are talking the final judgment seat. This is the great judgment seat, because this is Goy, the single evil nation. Because ultimately they are considered one tribe of evil versus one Adamic resurrected tribe, and that evil tribe, Goy, will be destroyed, which I'm casting out before you. This is the pre-type of this is the Egyptians dead on the seashore. Satan and all of his will be dead. Ashes below our feet, and whatever metaphor you like. For they did all these things. What is the world doing right now? They're trying their very best to find out every possible sin that they could break, in every possible permutation. And therefore I abhorred them. But I have said to you, you shall inherit their ground, their country. And I will, it's ad matam, it's their ground, the country. And I will give it to you to possess it. A land, an aretz, or an earth, or kingdom, flowing with milk and honey. By the way, wherever God is, that's the kingdom. I am Jehovah, the God of all of you, who has separated, sanctified it you from among the countries, the peoples. You shall therefore make a distinction. This is what the whole Bible is. Make a distinction between the clean beast and the unclean, between the unclean fowl and the clean. And you shall not make at your souls abominable by beast or bird or anything which the ground teems, which I have separated from you as unclean for you. He's talking about all the stuff in the world that is not unclean for you, stay away from it. That's the physical. Spiritually, it's even more important. What you hear, see, think about. You shall be holy to me, or for me. Li, Lamed Yod, Li. For ani, Kadosh ani Yehovah. I, Yehovah, am holy. And I have set at you, all of you, it's in the plural you, apart from the countries, the peoples, that you should be mine. A man or a woman that is a medium or a wizard shall surely be put to death. They shall stone them with stones, their blood shall be upon them. They made the choice to be Satan's mouthpiece instead of God's mouthpiece. And that's the conclusion of Kedoshim. So now we're going to go to the apostle portion. There's actually two readings here. One from Amos chapter 9, a part of that, and most of chapter 20, Yehezkel, Ezekiel. Amos 9, 7 through 15. And you, all of you, as B'nai Cushiyim, sons of the Ethiopians. Cush is the root here. Oh, you sons, it was basically Israel, you have become like the Ethiopians. Have I not brought Israel out of the land of Egypt and out of the Philistines, of Pelishtim and Kaftor and Aram from Kir? Behold, this says, I've done all this for you. Now you're becoming another strange nation. Behold, the eyes of Adonai Yehovah are upon the sinful kingdom, and I shall destroy it from off Panei Adamah, the face of the ground. Nevertheless, I shall not Hashmed Ashmi. This is a double word play. Destroy. See, how would you say this? Destroy destroyingly. Destroy being kind of a noun form, it's more static, and then and it means utterly destroyed. It's a doubled form of it. These are what are called word plays. Nehemiah Gordon talks about this in the Shem Tov, because it's there too. I will not utterly destroy at house of Jacob. Nahum Yehovah emphatically saith Jehovah. Remember, it's the house of Jacob. And behold, I shall command and I shall shake at Beit Yisrael. Jacob, Israel, Yeshurun. It's talking about the progression. I'm going to shake Jacob and take out all the physical seed that's not going to be Israel, and Israel I will teach and bring into resurrection Yeshurun. Behold, I shall command and I shall shake Beit Yisrael. Remember, I'm going to destroy the house of Jacob, the place where they are, and out of them will come Israel. As one does shake with a sieve, and not a grain, not a one of my people shall fall to the ground. This is the threshing floor of Atad. You ever seen people sift the grain? You even have these machines that do it now. Yes, shake the hull, and a dot comes out of it. That's exactly it. Perfect. All the sinner. That should read all the sinners. I'm going to change it now. It should read, it does read now, 9:10. All the sinners of Ami, my people, shall die by the sword. Again, remember, Ami is a country form in Hebrew. So people from any Goy, any tribe, can join his people. But when we're resurrected, that's when we become Goy Ahad. That's the Adamic changed mode, changed form. All the sinners of my people shall die by the sword. Remember the sword, two-edged sword, it's his word. Judged according to his nature, his word. Those that say evil shall not overtake us nor confront us. New Testament form of this, people have been saying Messiah's coming forever. Given and taken in marriage till the flood came, right? That's Noah's time. That was a metaphor of the future judgment. By Yom Hahu, again, 9/11, in that day, millennium, I raise up Sukkot David Ha-Nophelet, the fallen tabernacle of David. But that means the fallen tabernacle of the beloved, because that's what David means. That's Messiah. We are in this world is the fallen tabernacle. We have fallen. We will be as the stars of heaven, raised back up. It's a picture of Zion, raised up. And close up at breaches thereof. When we sin, it's like you're tearing remember the tabernacle, the border of the tabernacle, that fence it's a type and shadow of the panels of the Torah. So when we sin, it's like we take out one of those cloth, one of the lambskins. You take a page or part of the scroll and tear it away. Now there's a breach in the wall. Satan has access to our lives through that sin because we rejected part of Torah. And eventually, if you take enough of it out, the whole fence, the whole belief and obedience of you become completely Torahless. That's why Yeshua says, "Get away from me, you Torahless ones. You're full of breaches. There's nothing left." Those that say evil shall not overtake us. In that day I'll raise up this tabernacle. I'll close the breaches thereof, and I will raise up its ruins. Again, the wall will rebuilt. Remember when Cyrus says, go rebuild the wall of Jerusalem. Go reestablish a Torah-based kingdom. And I will raise up his ruins, and I will build it as Yemei Olam, the days of old, as is the creation. The beginning is the end, and the end is the beginning. I agree. So, that many that they may possess at remnant of Edom and call Hoganim. What the world has spoiled and overtaken will be removed from them. And why does God use Edom here specifically? Because the latter days are called the time of Jacob's trouble, and he has to deal with the last thing that Jacob did not allow God to do for him was to take care of Edom. So Edom represents all the evil nations. That's why it says they may possess a remnant of Edom and all the nations, because my name is called upon them, the people he saves. Nahum Yehovah that does this. Behold, days come to millennium, the latter 2 days rather, before the millennium, Nahum Yehovah, that the plowman shall overtake the reaper and the treader of grapes, him that sows the seed. That's actually happening in Israel right now. They're much more fruitful than any other nation for the given amount of land. And the mountain shall drop sweet wine, and all the hills shall melt. All the other oppression shall go away, and I will bring back the captivity of my people Israel. They shall build the waste cities, not cities. I thought I changed this already. I know I did, so I don't know why this did not come over, but I'm going to change it now. Just that way I know it's changed. And they shall build the waste cities and inhabit them, and they shall plant vineyards and drink the wine thereof. They shall also make gardens and eat the fruit of them. I just need to check 98 because I remember there was a mistake in that. Okay, that's all right. And 9:15. And I will plant them upon their ground, ad matam, and they shall no longer be pulled up out of their ground that I have given to them. So this is millennium into the eternal. Says Yehovah Elohecha, and it's again your God, singular. He's telling each of us you're going to be established in security forever. And now from Ezekiel chapter 20, starting at verse 2 to 20. And was or came Devar Yehovah to me, saying, God came to Ezekiel. Ben-Adam, son of Adam, this is that Melchizedek priest form. You are this, look at the genealogy, it's this Melchizedek priesthood, son of Adam. Speak unto the elders of Israel, Ziknei, and say unto them, thus says Adonai Yehovah, have you come to inquire of me? As I live, I will not be inquired of by you, saith Adonai Yehovah. Will you judge them? Will you not? Will you judge them, Ben-Adam? Cause them to know what the abominations of their fathers. In other words, I want you to go to my people and tell them why I'm not responding to them anymore. Remember God no longer talked to Saul. And saying to them, thus says Adonai Yehovah, in the day I chose Israel and lifted up my hand, Yadi, unto Zerah Beit Israel, the seed of the house of Jacob, and I made myself known unto them in Eretz Mitzrayim, land of Egypt, and I lifted up Yadi, my hand, to them, saying, Ani Yehovah Elohechem, I am Yehovah, the God of all of you, your God in plural. You, plural, God. By Yom Hahu, in this day, at the end, he's going to do the same thing. I lifted up my hand for them to bring them out of the land of oppression. So this is both the Egypt that happened and the one world government we're going to be taken out of, saved from, to a land I sought out for them, flowing with milk and honey. It is the glory of all the lands, millennial kingdom into the future. And I said unto them, Ish, every man cast away shik utsei, detestable things of his eyes, and defile yourselves not with gilulei Mitzrayim, the idols of Egypt. Or they had, everything was a god. Crocodiles, beetles, flies, everything. And he, Yehovah, I need Adonai Yehovah. I am the Lord of Lords Yehovah, because Adonai is a plural form of Adon. But they rebelled against me and would not hearken unto me. They heard but didn't listen, right? Would not hearken unto me. Hearken means to do and obey, basically. And they did not, each, every man, cast away the detestable things of their eyes, nor did they forsake the idols of Egypt. And I said to them, I will pour out Hamati, my wrath. Yes, Hamas, Hamati share the same root over them, but one is righteous, one is unrighteous. Hamas is unrighteous, Hamati, God's wrath, is righteous over them, to finish my anger, Api, in them, Betoch Eretz Mitzrayim, in the midst of the land of oppression. See, this is tricky now. I mean, it's talking about history, but it's also talking about now. Because I will finish my anger in the midst of the kingdom of oppression they're in now. Now, if you look at the prophecies in Isaiah and other places, it says, I'm going to punish you double that everybody else gets because you should have known better, but now the punishment is over. Now, from now on comes the salvation work, the actual bringing you out. So what's happening to us now is this. He's finishing his anger in the midst of this kingdom of oppression we're in. By the way, they were not in Egypt at this time. So they're reading history, but it's also their time. We're in Ezekiel, right? Ezekiel's the time of Jeremiah. There's that overlap. I'm going to finish my anger in Babylon destroying your evil kingdom. Because actually Nebuchadnezzar was his guy, his God's guy. And the king of Egypt, or king of Yehuda was Satan's guy. It's the opposite. But I acted for the sake of my name, my nature, Shemi, my name, so that it would not be profaned before the nations. I'm going to show how I really am, not how the world is portraying, not how my kingdom is portraying me. Because my kingdom is evil, so I'm destroying it. And Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, is actually a good guy, and I'm going to bless him. It's the opposite. But he's showing his real nature. Because Nebuchadnezzar is the one who says, Jehovah is the God of gods. And he obeys God. And the king of Yehuda, all of them, and their prophets are all false prophets and horrible kings. They were not obeying God. They were doing the opposite. So God says, my nature is this. I destroy the wicked and uphold the righteous. And I brought them forth out of the land of oppression, Egypt, and brought them unto Ha-Midbar, the wilderness. Ezekiel, I will bring you into the wilderness of the peoples. Here we are. And I gave them at Hukotai, at Mishpatai, my statutes and my ordinances I made known to them, which if Ha-Adam, the man, any individual, does them, and he will live in them. Notice nowhere in the Torah or in the Haftorah does God ever say, do this and be saved. It says, do this and live. Salvation only comes from the forgiveness of sins by the God who died for us. But if you want to live forever in the kingdom, you have to live the life that is life. That's the book of life. Not some arbitrary set of rules. And I also gave to them at Shabtotai my Sabbaths for a sign, same as in 31:13 of Exodus, Shemot, between me and them forever, that they might know that I am Jehovah who hallows them, separates them. It's just almost word for word. It's worded a little different. It's the same thing. Above all my Sabbaths you shall keep it as a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know I'm the Lord your God who sanctifies you. It's just a different wording in 2012 of Ezekiel. But Beit Yisrael rebelled against me in the wilderness. In my statutes they did not walk, and at my ordinances they despised. Which if the man does at them, he will live in them. And at my Sabbaths they profaned greatly. And I said, I would pour out my Hamati, my wrath upon them in the wilderness to destroy them. Think about the generation, types and shadows that came out of Egypt. They all went through the water. Remember, Paul talks about they all crossed the Red Sea. But that generation, he said, they will not see my rest because they rejected everything. They tested it and tested, rejected God in every way. And even then, when he would bring them into the kingdom, they rejected it again, so they shall not see my rest. None of those people are coming into the kingdom. But their sons, who they said would be lost, actually he saves. But I worked for the sake of my name, my nature, Shemi, my name, so that it would not be profaned before the eyes of the nations, the tribes, before whose eyes I brought them out. What was the purpose that he originally stated to Moses when he talked to him about the work that was to be done in Egypt? So that Pharaoh in Egypt would know who I am, would know his name, his nature. He did everything according to his word so that all the people, the nations of the world, and God's people, his own people, would know his nature. And he's constant. God doesn't change. That means you can trust his name, you can trust his nature. That's why Yeshua says, you do all things in my nature. My name means more than just my name. Christians wear the t-shirt. What would Jesus do? Well, he'd keep the Sabbath. And he wouldn't eat unclean things, just to name two things. Right? And I also lift up my hand before them in the wilderness, that I would not bring at them into the land that I gave them. Remember, this is the ones who rejected him. Flowing with milk and honey is the glory of all the lands. Because they despised my ordinances and my statutes, in them they did not walk. See the reverse? Statutes, ordinances, ordinance, statutes. It's a little chiastic teaching here. And at Sabbath they profaned, for their hearts went after their idols. They went after Satan. What did they say over and over and over? The sons didn't do it. Until a couple of times. But the parents always, let's appoint a leader and go back to Egypt, back to Satan. And my eyes had pity on that, without destroying them, and I did not consume them in the wilderness. Remember, they counted the people at the beginning of the Exodus, 603,000 soldiers plus. At the end, they counted them again. Even though one generation was gone, there's still 603,000 plus soldiers. Hosts. And I said unto their sons in the wilderness, in the statutes of your fathers do not walk, and in their ordinances do not observe, and in their idols do not defile yourselves. So when people say, look, my parents were Catholic, oh, my parents are Orthodox rabbinical Jews, well, it doesn't mean you have to do that. You're going to be Jew, at least get into the path of the Karaites, Torah and Torah only, and then your next step is just to who Yeshua is. And for Christians, stop doing what the Catholics, Baptists, and everybody else say and start following the Bible, and eventually you'll be in this movement as well. Because this is God's path. Torah and Torah only, and Messiah only. Yeshua only. There's no three gods, there's one God. You going to say something? I just saw your hand. It's very distracting. Just sit there quietly. No, because if you have a question and you want to say something, please. This is not, it's not a performance here. It's, iron sharpens iron. And ye, Jehovah, the God of all of you, in my statutes walks, and my ordinances keep, and fulfill at them. That means understandingly know them.
So he was some style of teaching that.
Absolutely. And the Greek word they use here is what?
Pleroo.
To correctly teach. So fulfill means, don't just do it mechanically. What do we say over and over? The why. Why are you doing it? Because if we do it in belief, because we realize that this actually works out, we do it because we want to, because we want to. We like it. Even though it's very different at the beginning, right? And my Sabbath hallow, and it shall be. Then if you hallow it, by the way, notice this is first, my Sabbath hallow. And, that's a connector, one follows the other, and if you do that, then it shall be for you a sign between you and me. And between you, all of you, for you, all of you, to know that I am Jehovah, the God of all of you. So, this links with the earlier part. It's the completion of 31:13 with some more explanations in the middle. So Ezekiel, God through Ezekiel, is actually plerooing the Torah, correctly teaching the Torah from 31:13. Now the Brit Hadashah portions, there are 3 of them. 2 from Matthew and 1 from 1 Peter. First portion is 533 to 548 of Matthew. Again, you have heard what was said to those of long ago, you shall not swear by my name falsely. Only in the Shem Tov does this have this. The Greek does not say that. But you shall return to Jehovah your oath. God says, you don't have to make an oath, but if you do it, fulfill it. That means return your oath.
We made an oath at Mount Sinai, and we wrote it.
Right. But I say unto all of you, not to swear in any manner, not by heaven, nor for it is the throne of Elohim, and not by the earth, for it is the footstool of his feet, nor by heaven. Now this translation puts Jerusalem, which agrees with the Greek and the Aramaic. Anyway, so the habitation of the peace of Yahweh is what that means, because this is the city of Elohim, or the great king. This is more the teaching form of it. You can kind of read through this, because I put the Greek and Aramaic, which are always in agreement, as counteropposed or paralleled with the Hebrew from the Shem Tov. So let's go back though. He says, don't swear falsely by my name. Now what he's saying, don't start doing this. Don't swear by heaven or earth or anything else. This is different than the swear by name. You can swear by God's name. Just don't do it falsely. Because that's why he conflates the term oath with swearing by his name. Because when you make an oath to God, you're swearing by his nature. But don't swear by heaven and earth and rocks and I tell you by the speed of my Camaro, none of that stuff. Because what you're doing is you're adding to, your yes should be yes and your no should be no. And not by your head, for you're not able to make one hair of your white, black, not by your word. So really, but only let your words be yes, yes, and also no, no. In the idiomatic Hebrew, this is let your yes mean yes, and your no mean no. What do you say to your children if you're at it? Look, when I say yes, it means yes, and my no means no. I remember telling my daughter, who sits in the back right now, you can ask me the same question over and over and over again. You remember what I used to tell you. The answer's not going to change.
Ain't gonna change.
Yeah, you got to try. And yeah, I know. And for a few years, she would just walk up to you. Yeah, I'm not going to answer that. Not going to answer that. No, it's just a growth process, right? But that's what God says. That's what He says to us. The Torah is the Torah. It's not changing. I'm God. I change not.
And that's what we do to Him all the time.
Well, He says, "Come reason together." So we're little children. Says, "Daddy, can I eat pork?" No, I've told you a million times no. And you can ask me tomorrow, and you still can't eat pork.
Can I go golfing on the Sabbath, Dad?
Oh, I'm sick. And it's like, well, I told you. I told
Yes.
you not to do this.
I remember Sandy and I went to a meeting. We were on a boat in San Diego when I worked for Varian, and they had this, the spread, to eat. And there was all this shrimp, and we looked at it and said, oh, man. Well, we weren't eating it anyway, but everybody except the two of us ate that shrimp. And within hours, they were all Technicolor smiling in the local facilities. Yes, street pizza, whatever you want to call it. Sidewalk pizza. Technicolor yawn, yeah, that's right. The porcelain goddess, all that stuff. But let your words be just yes or no. Everything in addition to this is evil. That's all this other stuff. The longer the contract, the more likely it is bad.
That's why contracts are like that.
That's right. The first time we bought a house, it was like 10 pages. Now they have to do it electronically because there aren't enough trees. I mean, there's just... I remember the last time we bought a property, the real estate agent kept saying, I promise you, this is the last one. I would always write her back. There's always another one. And 5 minutes later, I'd get another one, another email with another document to sign.
We're just let our contract was signed. I think 15
Yeah.
offers back and forth contracts. We haven't even signed the contract yet.
Yeah.
We've already signed like 20 emails.
Oh, yeah.
You know it.
Again, you've heard it said. Greek and Aramaic sentence ends here. The Shem Tov continues. So what the Shem Tov says, again, you've heard it said in the Torah, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you, do not repeat evil for evil. Don't pay back evil for evil. But he that smites your right cheek, provide him the left, and he that wishes to oppose you in judgment and rob your suit, leave to him your garment. Remember, we're the bondservant. Yeshua takes care of any issues. Read Tortured for Christ. That really explains this well. And he that asks you to go with him 1,000 steps, go with him 2,000. Him that asks for you give, and from him that wishes to borrow from you, do not hold back. But God also says, do not cast pearls before swine. I've never seen a righteous person, the grandson of a righteous man, begging for bread. You don't give money to people that want to buy drugs. You give them hope.
You're actually enabling.
You're enabling. Furthermore, Yeshua said unto his disciples, and that beginning is only in the Hebrew, you have heard, but it doesn't change the sentence or the verse. You have heard what was said to those of long ago, that you shall love the one that loves you, neighbor in Greek and Aramaic, and hate the one that hates you, enemy in Greek and Aramaic. But I say unto you, love your enemies, and do good to the one that hates you and vexes you. Now, what is love? Being willing to die for, tortured for Christ. This book explains this passage in Matthew very well, how they behave. But I say unto you, love your enemies and do good to the one that hates you and vexes you, and pray for those that persecute you and oppress you. That's just one hint of the spiritual aspect that this is about. In order that you might be B'nai Avichem, sons of your Father, who is in heaven, who causes the sun to shine on the good and on the evil, and causes it to rain on the bad and the just. One of the best ways of explaining this is in war, godly countries, more godly countries, when the wounded come into the hospitals, they triage them according to their wounds, not according to what uniform they wear. Israel being probably best known for this. When they would fight a horrible battle up in Lebanon or against the Syrians, and when the wounded come in, they triage according to the wounds. If you love those that love you, what's the reward? Don't the impudent love those that love them? 547, which is here, is not in Shem Tov at all. And it just says, and if you only greet your brothers, what exceptional thing do you do? Do not the tax collectors do so? So it really doesn't, you're not losing anything by not having that. But 548 is very important. Be you perfect as your Father is perfect. Which ties perfectly, be you holy for I am holy. By the way, holiness and perfection are the same thing.
I think that they can literally be perfect. I don't know why
No.
they-
How are we going to be perfect? Because eventually we're going to be resurrected and be perfect. So our only form of close to perfection is live according to God's word. And as he leads you, the P Yehovah, the mouth of Jehovah, Yeshua, the Spirit of God, the people of God are led by the Ruach Elohim, Spirit of God. Second portion is 15:1 and 11, also of Matthew. Then Hapershim, the Pharisees, the separated ones, and the Hachmim, the sages or Torah scholars, scribes, came to Yeshua and said unto him. Now I want to describe something here. This word, this is also out of the Shem Tov. Hachmim, Chachma. Chachma Elohim is the wisdom of God. Kind of in a funny way, I can say these are the wise guys. In a sense, they're both secular and quote-unquote spiritual PhD people. Everything from Torah scribes to history professors. You know, the world, the way the intelligentsia of the world, that's what the Hachmim are. So the best way to describe this, all scribes are Hachmim, but not all Hachmim are scribes. So I like the Shem Tov much better. But what the Greek is using grammaton, grammar, the writers of words. Right? But the Shem Tov is using just the wise guys. Now, that translator puts it as Torah scholars. Came to Yeshua and said to him, why do your disciples, Talmudim, transgress the takanot? These are the ordinances, rabbinical ordinances, or the traditional laws. Shem Tov is the only one that uses takanot. It's real tricky because in the Greek, in the English form, it's law, 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 law. But Shem Tov, the Hebrew, puts it in the Greek. I mean, the Hebrew takanot, which is the rabbinical rules, not God's laws, their laws. So why do your Talmudim transgress the rabbinical ordinances or traditions of antiquity by not washing their hands before eating in the manner that they prescribe? In other words, they had specific ways that they were supposed to wash their hands. They still have it. The rules have just changed. They have these two-handled buckets of water containers. And you use one handle to wash one hand. Now that hand's clean, so you can't use the dirty handle for the dirty hand. So then you have to use the other handle to wash the other hand. And then when you've done all that, then you have to use some special cloth and wash that container again, because it's just, and if you forget to do it, you have to say all these prayers and just, now, you can do it if you want to, just don't say that God required it. That's what Yeshua is talking about. Because they're saying you have to obey the rabbinical rules. And Yeshua said unto them, he answers what's in their heart. Why do you transgress the Imre Ha'el, the spoken word of the God, singular, Ha'el? Because of your ordinance takanot. In other words, you're telling people that they have to do things which are actually breaking God's law, God's rules. For the God, Ha'el, said, honor your father and your mother, and he that smites his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. Those quotes come from Exodus. 15:5 is so different in both languages. Both translations did it twice. In the Hebrew it says, but you say that whatever word the man should say to his father and his mother in regard to any donation he might give for him as a sinner, at his sin itself shall be made void for at him. In other words, this is called korban, saying, you know, you're supposed to support your mother and your father, right? Particularly the firstborn, he gets a double inheritance because that's their retirement plan. Says, I'm sorry, I gave that so my name could be up on the new community center. And if I don't, once I've done that, that's a sin if I give you the money. But they're breaking says, in the Greek it says, but you say, well, whoever says to his father or his mother, what benefit you would have received from me as a gift to God. So essentially, if you read them both together, they actually explain each other, add a little bit more to each other, so that's nice. But they're very different. When they're this different, I'll put the verse twice. And so he does not honor his father and his mother. See, that's the issue, is God's commandments, which are life, as opposed to people's commandments, which may or may not be in agreement with God. And so he does not honor his father and his mother, and you despise the spoken precept in the Greek, words of El, God in the singular, Theo in the Greek, in your takanot, in your rules. Woe, hypocrites, behold, Yeshayahu, Isaiah, prophesied concerning you and said, thus Jehovah said, for Ha'am Hazeh, this the people, has come near with their mouth and has honored me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. They're faking it. And their reverence unto me, which is taught, is the mitzvot anashim. It's actually the commandments of fleshly men. Takanot. And Yeshua called unto the multitudes and said unto them, hear and consider. Basically, what he's saying up to 5:9, he's putting it back. He's saying the prophecy of Isaiah is talking about you, about the Takanot and the rabbis, the wise guys, and their rules. Look at the laws in the world today. Just thousands and tens of thousands of laws in the Ten, and many of which are totally the opposite of God's will. That's a Takanot in our country. That's why it's not only the rules of the rabbis, but of the tradition of the elders also. So he said to the multitudes, which is a type and shadow of Ephraim, they are becoming sojourners in God's kingdom again. Hear and consider. That which enters through the mouth, into the body, in other words, does not soil the man. Now, all through Matthew in the Greek, they are not using the Greek word andres for men, except in a few instances. They're consistently in the Greek says a version of anthropon, anthropos, which is humans. So I am putting it literally as the Greek really says it. Does not soil the man, the human. There's nothing wrong with that, but I'm putting it the way it is. Andres is man. But that which goes out of the mouth soils the man, the human. In other words, it's not this path down to the toilet matters, it's from the heart out that matters. From the fullness of the heart, the mouth does speak. This is what we've been talking about for a month. Don't focus on the food. I mean, you shouldn't eat unclean, you should only eat the clean, but that's not what God is teaching. He's teaching about, because this affects what comes out of the heart. It's what you take in spiritually. Physically also, by the way, if you eat unclean foods, it makes your body a mess.
Here he's really talking about dirty hands.
Pardon?
He's not even talking about food, he's talking about dirty hands.
Yes, dirty hands.
Because he's talking about whether the hands are clean.
Yeah.
But that refers
That's actually a good addition what you just said there. Because the issue is, we start out walking with hands, they say if you don't clean your hands properly, then the food, doesn't matter what you're eating, is unclean.
That's where a lot of Christians get this idea that everything's been changed. Because the book says it's not what goes in that matters, that what kosher is irrelevant. That's not what it's saying.
No.
It means if you eat it, it's not going to ruin you spiritually, if something happens.
Paul says later on, you're neither blessed or harmed by what food you eat, but it's food.
Yeah, it's specific, it's
Yeah.
understood that it's what you place in food.
And what Daryl said is really important, because the issue here is that they're about to eat clean food, but they haven't washed their hands, so the rabbis are saying now the food's not clean. And then he's saying, well, look, the issue is not the hands and the food. The issue is what comes out of your mouth, which is these guys. They're spewing lies to people, and half their takanot are in direct opposition to God's word.
But what they don't, what Christians don't understand is when they say food is kosher, they don't have a relationship enough to understand that everything said is based on the fact that these people already keep, the people he's speaking with already keep kosher as a
And it comes down to definition. Where's the definition of food? The definition of food is never given in the New Testament. The definition of food is in Vayikra, Leviticus, chapter 11. So when they say food, every time you see the word food in the New Testament, you have to go back to
That's
Leviticus.
But they don't understand that that's what that means. They're like, food, because to us, the word food is whatever's
Right.
in the grocery store.
And what Daryl was saying, this is kind of interesting. It's good, because what did God also say about clean foods, clean animals? If it gets hit by a car, when you torn apart by beasts, dies, you find it dead in the field, it's no longer food. But the rabbis are saying, also, if you don't wash your hands in this way, it's no longer food. But God says, that's not one of my rules.
right.
Look, you can do it if you want to, but don't say people have to do it. And then declare the food unclean because they have ritually unclean hands. super Orthodox Jews get freaked out if they put the wrong shoe on in the morning. They have to start over and say extra prayers before they say the regular prayers, put the right shoe on first and the left shoe. Then if they don't wash they have to start over. But they don't do it, they can't. I told you the story about Rick Winkler and I in the Heartline. Oh, you can't do all the stuff, you do the best you can. But wait a second, you say you have to do it. It's exactly what Yeshua says. You cross oceans to make a proselyte and make them twice the son of hell as you are, putting on them a burden they can't keep and you don't or won't keep. That's what this is all about.
Catholics do that too.
They all do it.
Well, I know a girl personally, it broke my heart because I don't know, she's so into it, I don't know if I can't reach her, I'm not close enough, but she was posted about her kids. They're adorable, but she's talking about teaching them all these specific prayers and canons and you worship this, you pray to this, food on this day and this and this and this. She said, I hope he understood, I hope they just grasp the order of service and this mass and they get it right because I just want them to go to heaven and my heart. I think it's not.
And the thing that makes it so sad is that eventually, having been raised as a Catholic, until about the age of 10 I actually kind of believed it. And that, well, that's the thing. What happens is that you never do it. And then you start getting into the denial system because I don't know a Catholic who is a Catholic. They're kind of Catholic. You know, I do some of this part. I've never seen a rabbinical. They do part of it because you can't do all of it. So you end up not doing what you say you have to do, and it gives you this turmoil in your life, and it causes a lot of people just to give up.
I had this lady come to my store. Religion or whatever you want to call it than anybody could ever get into. She was serious when she was raised that.
Oh, when I found out it was fake, I was, as 10 years old, I was PO'd, to use the vernacular. And I was still forced to go to Wednesday studies and stuff, you know. I had to go through, what are they called? But, you know, when you get your I had to go through confirmation, the first host, and all this junk. Because I was a child having to obey my parents. But man, as soon as I could, you know, stand on my own, I said, this is BS. I'm not doing any of it.
It's so because it causes such distress.
Yes.
The mother just wants her children to know God.
Yeah.
But she's caught up in, if I don't.
It causes them not to know God.
everything.
It causes them to know Satan.
She has a heart for it, but she's in the wrong spot.
But God can work with that. But God has to do that conviction. That's just like Paul was the same way. I'm not meaning to interrupt you, but this was Paul's issue. He was the Catholic of the day. Look, rabbinical and Catholics are the same people. They're just on opposite sides of the paper. Like I told LJ one time. Look, they both wear black, and neither of them read the Torah or the Bible.
It keeps her in a constant state of fear that she's not doing enough for the children.
But right now, God is using that in her life to give her the frustration that maybe she'll break out of it.
I hope so. She's doing such a good job, but I hate to see they're trapped by what they're told they have to do.
They're trapped and they're not trapped. Dedicated people God can work with. He cannot work with the non-choosers. If you are dedicated to what you're doing, no matter how insane it is, if you really believe it and do it, God can work with that. He can't work with someone who says, well, nothing's important. Can't work with that. That's why, what does Elijah say? Choose this day. Choose this day. Before the judgment, choose. So the last portion is from 1 Peter, Kepha Aleph. Therefore, prepare your minds for action. Well, that's relation. This is prep work, right? Not saving up food and stuff. Some say you can have store food, but the prep work is relationship with God. Prepare your minds for action. Be sober. Don't fool around. Don't waste your time. Set your hope fully on the unmerited favor of God, the grace that you'll be brought to at the revelation of Yeshua the Messiah. God's coming back. As sons of obedience, not conforming yourselves according to your former lusts of the body in your ignorance. See? Just what you were talking about. She's now conforming to the former lusts in her ignorance. Lusts in the Bible means ungodly things. Catholicism or Islam, if you're really into it, it's a lust because it's a mechanical man system, not a God system. But just as he who called you is holy, you yourselves also be holy in all of your behavior, because it is written, you shall be kadosh, holy, for ani kadosh, I am holy. If, conditional, you call on him as Father, he is the Father. Yeshua is the Father. If you call on him as Father, who, without respect of persons, judges according to the work of each man, pass the time of your living as sojourners here in reverent fear. Do your work save you? No, but it's an indicator of who you are. Even in the judgment it says, the wicked will be punished according to their evil deeds, and the righteous rewarded, not given life, rewarded for their good deeds. Because everything is done either by the spirit of Satan in the wicked or the spirit of God in their lives. We are the branches. Knowing that you were redeemed, not with corruptible things, not with physical silver or physical gold, from the useless way of life handed down from your fathers. This links to Jeremiah. Everything handed down to our father, from us, from our fathers, is a lie and of no value. But with what? The real thing, with the precious blood, as of the faultless and pure Lamb, the blood of Messiah, who was foreknown indeed before the foundation of the world, but was revealed at the end of times for your sake.
Like you revealed it to the Egyptians.
Was revealed at the Aharit Hayamim. I know this is in Greek, so it doesn't say it in the Hebrew. What this actually links back to this Aharit Hayamim. He was revealed at the beginning of the Aharit Hayamim and at the end of the Aharit Hayamim. He's talking about both revelations here. He was revealed before he's telling these people, and now you believe because he has come. Guess what? He's coming again. That's why this all starts out with, prepare your minds. Your former lusts, what you were before, the reason you've changed is because God came and you believe that he came to save you. He's coming back. Prepare yourself for his coming back at the end of time. Who, through him, are believers, see, in the God of gods. But remember, call him his Father. He is the God of gods. Why do you call me good? Only your Father in heaven is good. He never says, don't call me good. I am your Father in heaven, who raised him from the dead and gave him glory, so that your faith and hope might be in Elohim. Face it, your faith and hope is supposed to be in Jesus, in Yeshua, yes. But guess what? He's the God of gods. There is no other. That permanent outer coating is now the permanent visage of God. He wears that clothing of the holy resurrected non-flesh. It's not flesh, that holy image forever. He chose to put on our image. And that's the image we were made in.
That's love.
Yes. That concludes our unfallen image. Yeah. Yes, the Adamic image, not the split image. That's why when he was resurrected, they looked at him like, don't I know you from somewhere? You know, I mean, you look familiar, but They even said, when we saw you on the shore making the fish, we thought it might be you, but we weren't quite sure.